Hi guys, I'm just another guy named James, and today I'm going to be talking about the next set of G.I. Joe comics. These issues were released from 1991, I believe from February, cover dated February to July. Now this story right here is a pretty good one. It starts off really strong. There's a lot of good stuff that goes on. All of these issues are written by Larry Hama, as most from the G.I. Joe series tend to be. The first issue is going to be drawn by Mark Bright. The second here by John Stapma. Third one by Ron Garney, and then I believe all of the rest of them are drawn by Stapma. You do still get a few Lee Weeks covers, but he does not do the interiors. Which is interesting. Kind of a shame. Lee Weeks does. I think Lee Weeks did a really good job on the couple of issues he drew, and I would have liked to have seen a little bit more from his more artwork on interiors during this time. I think Mark Bright did a really good job as we're kind of coming into the end of his time as the primary artist on G.I. Joe. He had a pretty long run, a good near 20 issues. But I do think that overall he could have been, his run on G.I. Joe could have been the best artistically, but it was probably dragged down a little bit for me personally by the honestly lackluster writing that the G.I. Joe comic had kind of fallen into around this time. The story that we're talking about today, we do get a nice solid shakeup. A lot of kind of the status quo of the G.I. Joe comic changes here. It is still this story is plagued by honestly a lot of the same problems that a lot of the stories around it have, but it starts off a lot stronger and stays strong throughout most of the story. It just fails to stick the landing. Let's see. Is there any background context that is important to know? Nothing particularly. Let's see. Some of your important characters in this story are going to be Duke, General Hawk, Snake Eyes, Storm Shadow. They become important at the end, which is kind of a problem unto itself, but I'll get into that after the recap of the story. Let's see. Snake Eyes, Storm Shadow, Cobra Commander. Cobra Commander's a big one. Remember that he has just had his life almost ended by Snake Eyes. Literally concurrently as this story is starting, that's also going down. So Cobra Commander's a little extra cowardly and a little extra scared to piss off the G.I. Joes. Let's see. Those are kind of your main characters that I can think of. There are a bunch of characters from throughout the G.I. Joe comics history, going back all the way to issue 1 that we see throughout this story. But they don't really play a lot of them don't really play major roles. This story is interesting because you can tell it's kind of a response to a common criticism in the letter columns of the time, and that common criticism was, why doesn't anyone ever die in the G.I. Joe comic? Which is fair. We haven't had up to this point, I don't believe we've had a non-original character to the comics stay dead. Because General Flag was killed in issue 5, or not in issue 5, what am I saying? General Flag was killed in issue 16. General Flag was killed early in the run. Dr. Venom, again, killed early in the run. Dr. Venom, killed very early in the run. The Ninja Masters got killed off. Billy got killed off. Let's see. A lot of, but yeah, really, you just had a lot of those original characters go dropping. But even when they did almost kill real characters like Cobra Commander or Zartan or a couple of others that we'll learn about later, they just didn't. They just kind of had a problem of keeping them dead, and it starts to feel. I think it started to feel a little cartoony for the fans who at this point had grown up with the G.I. Joe comic for nearly 9 or 10 years, and we're turning. Yeah, so the original fans of the comic were turning into young adults now, and they were kind of wanting to see some more weighty stories coming out, and they got it in this set. But honestly, that'll be again a topic for discussion after the recap. All right, so let's start on our story, which today opens in the Middle East as Lieutenant Falcon, Duke, and a bunch of other Joes are driving around destroying some Cobra terrordromes, but a lone Cobra vehicle makes it out, and the Joes chase it so that the Cobras can't report that the Joes were there in the Middle Eastern country destroying stuff, because they're not, technically speaking, supposed to be there. And the Joes chase it, but they're led into a trap. And after unsuccessfully trying to fight their way out, the Joes surrender so that they can care for their wounded. After they surrender, the Crimson Guard commanders, Tomax and Xamot, get all up in Duke's face. So Duke spits in it, and he receives quite a beating for his trouble. Duke keeps getting pummeled as the rest of the Joes are forced into a ravine. And as they go, Cross Country steals a knife off of one of the Vipers. But soon the twins get tired of beating on Duke, who is kind of playing possum. He's pretending to be more hurt than he is. But Tomax and Xamot go back to camp, and they call Cobra Commander, and they ask him what to do with the prisoners. And Cobra Commander tells them to get rid of them immediately. And Cobra Commander, since Snake Eyes just almost killed him, means to release them. But the twins misunderstand, and they go to the Vipers to figure out an executioner. And none of the Vipers want to do it except for a new heavy weapons / heavy armor troop, the Saw Viper. And he walks over to the hole, and just as Doc is being lifted, pokes his head out to get a view, his head is blown smooth off. And the Saw Viper tries for the rest of them, but Thunder, Crankcase, and Heavy Metal block the first barrage of bullets with their bodies. Cross Country gives Lieutenant Falcon his knife, and he's able to throw it into the Saw Viper's chest and charge him, getting his gun but being tagged in the arm along the way. So Quick Kick picks up the gun and mows down the rest of the Vipers. Breaker is then able to get some communications equipment and call to the pit and ask for extraction. And Hawk scrambles a team to come in by space drop in the mobile command center. Tomax and Xamot pick up the frequency, and they send part of their armor to go and kill off the rest of the Joes. And the Joes have stolen this giant Cobra tank thing, and they go riding off with the bodies of their 4 dead comrades in tow. As the Cobra reinforcements approach, we see that the Saw Viper was able to survive the knife to his chest and is still out for blood. The Joes are able to take down part of the Cobra armor, but soon one of the tanks is able to shell the Joes' vehicle, destroy it, killing off the rest of everyone except for Duke, Falcon, and Cross Country. As that happens, the command sensor starts its descent from orbit, but the Joes on the ground are surrounded. Duke, Falcon, and Cross Country prepare for their final stand in a pistols versus tanks duel, just hoping to take out as many of the Cobras as possible before they die. We then cut away, and we see that Tomax and Xamot have reached the city which they plan to hostily take over. But as they stand there and prepare, Cobra Commander calls to check on the status of the Joes, and the twins realize that they were supposed to release the Joes. So they call the Saw Viper as he toys with Duke and Falcon and Cross Country, and they tell him to stop. We then see the Cobras march straight through the city, neutralizing every major target except for the leader of the country, who gets away. In the desert, we see the Saw Viper drive away, but as he goes, Duke gets a crisp shot on him straight to his head, but his armor plating protects him. And we learn that Duke is definitely out for vengeance. The Mobile Command Center finally makes landfall, and Falcon, Duke, and Cross Country load up and tear off for the Saw Viper. Tomax and Xamot eventually come clean to Cobra Commander, so he decides to go to the Middle East himself. The Saw Viper's tank eventually stops in the desert, but the Joes use some of their advanced firepower from the command center and start shooting at his tank before blowing it up with a missile rack. After the tank is destroyed, Duke goes for the Saw Viper, who basically surrenders, but soon a report comes through the radio that the country they're in has been taken over by Cobra, and they have no right to take prisoners. So the Saw Viper just goes free. No one does anything about it. Because Duke won't shoot him because he's unarmed. Whatever. Back in the U.S., we see that the previous leader of the country has asked for aid from the U.S. government, and they get it as the entirety of the Joe team is deployed to the Middle East. Cobra Commander lands in the city and he prepares to court-martial the Saw Viper, for lack of a better term, but he changes his mind and instead throws a celebration about the deaths of the Joes and the takeover of the country. On the outskirts of town, we see a group of Joes driving around doing surveillance until they are spotted and lead a bunch of Cobras into a trap. At the Desert HQ, the Emir of the country comes to speak to Hawk about his concerns over the artwork and valuables stored in his palace. A concern which Hawk doesn't share at all. Hawk's just concerned about his men. Meanwhile, in a Tomahawk helicopter, the Ninja Squad, Snake Eyes, Storm Shadow, Scarlet, and Jinx, get ready to do some recon and create a map of all tactical holdings. And they are soon deployed. As another battle distracts the Cobra forces, giving them the opportunity they need to enter the city undetected. Soon, Lady J and Flint are surrounded by a group of revolutionaries who hold them up at gunpoint. Back at the headquarters, the Joes and the Mobile Command Center arrive and they prepare a funeral detail. Back in the city, the ninja mark battlements on their map, all tactical areas, oil fields, all that stuff, but they soon run across the Saw Viper's party, and Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow are very seriously breaking radio silence and breaking cover just so that they can kill him. But Scarlet is able to convince Snake Eyes to let it breathe for now, and we soon see that a group of Night Creepers is following the Joe ninjas, and that the revolutionaries are planning an attack for that very night. But it'll endanger the Joes, so the Joe ninjas. So the recon team has to start jamming all frequencies, giving away their position to cover the ninjas and allow them to take down the Night Creepers without fear of reinforcements being called in. The recon team is forced to go wheels up while the ninja take down the revolutionaries in the city. And in the chaos, the Saw Viper takes a helicopter out and goes on patrol. So Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow decide to go jumping in to get him. Out in the desert, the recon team saves Flint and Lady J from the leader of the revolutionaries, and the ninja reunite with the recon team and head back to base. On the way, the leader of the revolutionaries shoots one of a brand new Joe, literally just in this one issue. So Snake Eyes wastes him. At the funeral for the Joes, Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow reveal that they have seemingly killed the Saw Viper. Alright, our next chapter opens on Recon Team Bravo as they're pinned down as they're pinned down by a group of Frag Vipers and Alley Vipers. Team Bravo is going to be Sneak Peek, Stalker, and Dusty. And they're pinned down, so the Joe by all these Vipers. So the Joes call in for support, and Hawk says that he will send the first available unit. But as they start eating some rations, Sneak Peek and Dusty reminisce about the past Christmas, where Dusty went sneak peeks for the day and how they enjoyed dinner together. But they are brought out of the moment by the gunfire surrounding them. So Hawk decides to send Battle Force 2000, who he has advancing through the oil fields, since he doesn't think Cobra will shell them, because that's a lot of money that they'll lose if he does. So Hawk sends them to support Recon Team Bravo. Meanwhile, in the oil fields to extract Yeah. An alley viper and a frag viper then soon decide to kind of peel off from the main group and are trying to flank the Joes, but instead they find a family. In the sewers, we see that Roadblock is also leading a team, and that they are kind of pushing towards the Cobras from under the ground. And so yeah, the Cobras theoretically are going to get flanked. In the square, the Cobras throw the little kid's toy out into the street and they send him out after it. And Sneak Peek sees the kid, so he runs out. He runs out to save him, but he gets shot in the run. Dusty is then thrown into his memories, saying, I was just talking to him about Christmas dinner. Sneak Peek, he had fallen asleep on the couch. I was helping his mom with the dishes. My son told me all about you, Dusty. Oh, well, I hope it wasn't anything too embarrassing. Oh, nothing like that. No, he told me that you were in the Cobra Island campaign with him, that you were a fine soldier. You know, my brother was in Vietnam. His unit was overrun. He was listed as missing in action. I didn't know. I'm sorry. We never got a body back or anything. Mama wrote letter after letter to the government, but it was like they just didn't care. It was awful for Mama, the not knowing. Would you promise me something, Dusty? Sure thing, ma'am. Anything you want. If anything should happen to my boy, would you bring him back to me? I promise. So Dusty really wants to track down Sneak Peek's body back to the States, so that they're not having to, so he can keep his promise that he made to his mom. We then cut away and we see the Emir call Cobra Commander and tell him that Battle Force 2000's position in the oil fields, and he offers to pay Cobra Commander $500 million to not shell the oil fields, completely compromising any tactical advantage that had. But Cobra Commander does it anyway. He just shells the thing, and all of Battle Force 2000, except for Dodger, dies. Meanwhile, in the square, Dusty and Stalker make a rush for the Cobra's secondary position, and while on the way, Dusty picks up Sneak Peek, but he's still able to cover Stalker's back. Roadblock's team is able to take down the rest of the Vipers, and they head back to base, with Dusty carrying Sneak Peek's body the whole way. Then the Emir and Cobra Commander begin negotiating. Soon we see another side of the conflict opening, as a group of G.I. Joe armor is coming back from a mission. They run across a new Cobra heavy weapons specialist named Metalhead. As they chase him, and they begin to chase him around. While that's going on, Cobra Commander has a face-to-face meeting with the Emir, and the Emir tries to betray Cobra Commander and set a trap for him, but he finds that he had already been caught in a better trap. Just as the Joes catch up to Metalhead, they get word over the radio that the Emir and Cobra made a deal, with Cobra saying that they will be leaving the country, and that that makes it so that the Joes are no longer welcome. And that's kind of just where this issue ends. We do have there's one more follow-up issue, technically, where the Joes go on this this stealth plane mission, and they discover that, and they find additional Cobra battlements that are being permanently stationed in the country, but it doesn't matter at all. There's never any follow up to the story. It kind of just ends here. And honestly, I do think that this story starts off really strong. I'd say the first two issues are really good. First three would almost be really good. I think the fact that Duke lets the Saw Viper live is terrible. And me personally, I would not write or draw that page of that comic in that way. And I kind of know exactly what I would do. In fact, I'm working on a my version of the last page, or of that last page of the story where Duke decides to let the Saw Viper go. Completely scot-free, by the way, because not only does Duke not kill him, he also can't arrest him or can't take him prisoner. Because they're the good guys and they don't do stuff like that. I guess I mean I get it. They're supposed to be better than the bad guys. I understand that, but at the same time, the Saw Viper wasted 7 of Duke's friends. Duke's the commanding officer of this unit. I guess Falcon would be the commanding officer. Duke is still the top sergeant of the Joe team, and one person just killed 7 of his closest allies. And Duke just lets him live, and I think that's stupid. So I'm working on redrawing the last page. Hopefully I'll have it done in time to put right here as I'm talking, as I'm editing the video. If not, I'll have the pencil layout, and I might throw that in. But man, I just can't get behind Duke's actions here. They're pretty, to me, they read as pretty inexcusable. Because later in the same story, in the very next, or 2 issues later, Snake Eyes kills the Saw Viper. Off page. And the Saw Viper is set up to be like this new big threat. Like he kills so many Joes. He's unstoppable with the heavy armor. And Snake Eyes, who has not been a part of the story up to this point, just gets to kill him off page. And it just reads so stupid to me, especially after they do a really good job like setting up the rivalry and the dichotomy between the Saw Viper and Duke, setting up where it's gonna be like a rivalry, and eventually Duke's gonna get him, and then they just don't. They let it fall flat. And then again, they have Snake Eyes coming and do it. And honestly, the whole ninja force element of this story is a hard one for me, because I just don't think the ninjas are that cool. Like Snake Eyes is really cool when he's Commando Snake Eyes, when he operates like how he does in issue 21 or issue 95 or 96, the middle part of the Snake Eyes trilogy, where he is Snake Eyes and he has a sword, but he also knows that an Uzi will work just as well. And you kind of lose a little bit of that in these issues. I don't know. Honestly, it's like I can't say that this story is bad, but it does really bother me that they set up this element of Duke versus the Saw Viper. They let that fall flat. And that's kind of the end of the first like half of the story, for a better word. The end of the opening action of the story. And then they also let the whole thing fall flat with Cobra and the Emir of the country just kind of deciding that they're going to work together, but in secret now. The whole thing just falls so flat. And it's not like one of those things that's, it's a flat ending so that they can expand on it later. Like, nah, it kind of just ends, and there's no repercussions. Cobra Commander's worried the whole time about a personal vendetta from the ninjas, because of the Joes killing off the Saw Viper killing off all the Joes. That never happens. There is no payoff for anything that is set up in this story, and that's fine. And that's just, it just feels sloppy because of that. The artwork is pretty decent throughout the story. I'm not going to say it's the best the G.I. Joe comics ever had, but it's certainly not bad. And I know that honestly from here on out in the G.I. Joe comic, I think it basically just gets worse. So there's that to look forward to for next time. But yeah, these issues they feel very, that Larry Hama kills off almost 20 G.I. Joes in this story. He kills off 7 in the like the Saw Viper kills 7 in the pit, or like in the pit in the following action. He kills off Thunder, Doc, Breaker, Quick Kick, Crazy Legs, Heavy Metal, and Crankcase. Now, as I just read those off to you, if you're not like a avid G.I. Joe toy fan, you probably only know half of those characters, and that's being generous. Breaker was one of the original 12 Joes. He's the only one you really get to know super well that dies here. Let's see, who else dies? You've got the random brand new Joe, Cool Breeze. He dies off after being really annoying for the one issue that he's in. Who else? All of Battle Force 2000. Who cares? Battle Force 2000 was lame to start with. They were all just as lame after they died. Let's see. Battle Force 2000 and Sneak Peek. Sneak Peek's death is good because it's the only one that that any of the characters in the comic react to as if a specific person they know died. Like Sneak Peek's death is the only one that really has any of the weight of death, a specific weight of death attributed to it. I think Duke and Falcon's like Duke, Falcon, and Cross Country makes sense that they're not like super in grief, and Cross Country definitely is, but Duke's like, hey, we got to focus on surviving and getting our buddies home. And then after they make it back to HQ, Duke does have a moment of breakdown. But I also think that Duke actually getting to get his revenge would have helped a lot with that. But yeah, honestly, the whole Desert War story really it starts off really strong. It starts off really intriguing. You've got this unstoppable foe that the Joes are doing their best with, but they're also dying off pretty hardcore midway through here. But yeah, the whole thing just reads really odd. Having it all fall flat at the end is unfortunate. There's no good resolution. Because again, if the Emir had died, or if the Joes had killed off the Emir, or had actually beaten Cobra out of the country, both of those would have been better endings or more satisfying endings than, Cobra kind of just gets to get all of the resources that they wanted from the country, but they're also not in charge of it anymore. So the battle's over, but the war is lost. And it's just like, and the G.I. Joe comic does this like kind of weird like halfway in the middle resolution. The G.I. Joe comic does this all the time with these with all these various stories that I've been talking about recently, whether it be the Snake Eyes trilogy, or Snake Eyes Snake Eyes and Scarlet and Storm Shadow running around the streets of New York with the Night Creepers, or Sierra Gordo, or going back to Sierra Gordo with the October Guard, or any of the other million stories that have been going on at this same time. Or the Joes getting brainwashed and then sent into the pit, and then it's like, oh, well, they're fine now because you can't, like, actually brainwash people. I don't know, the whole thing this whole era of G.I. Joe just reads like Larry Hama's trying too hard to like have these like smart stories with these like twisty ends that with these dissatisfying endings, because the real world's doesn't always give us satisfying endings, you know. It's like I know the real world doesn't. That's why I'm reading a comic book. But yeah, so overall on G.I. Joe Desert War, I would say I find myself recommending it. I think it's definitely worth reading. I think it's one of the last G.I. Joe stories that still has like that good quality, you know, a good level of quality to it. I don't remember what the actual the last one that I would really recommend as it stands. Like, there are some that I think the writing's fine again, but the art, but by that point in the comic, the art is so bad that it just doesn't matter. But yeah, I would say that this story, the Battle at Pit 3, or the Battle at Pit 2, excuse me. No, it would be Pit 3, I guess. Maybe, question mark. Let's see. Yeah, this and the Battle of Pit 3 are probably the last stories that I would say I really strongly recommend. But honestly, this is I would say a take it or leave it story as it stands out. Like I said, I would definitely change the ending of the plot out in the desert with Duke and the Saw Viper and Falcon. I would change the way that ends, me personally, because it does just really bother me that like the lack of resolution really gets to me. And it's just payoff. It's the lack of payoff is what bugs me. And that's kind of like Larry Hama at this point in the comic is setting up a lot of these Chekhov's guns that never fire, and it starts to feel sloppy at a certain point. And you pair that with the lack of resolution in all these stories, with all of the other problems that I just mentioned, and the comic does just kind of start to feel tedious. Even if issue to issue, it's not terrible. It can just very easily begin to feel tedious. But yeah, so that's kind of where I land on G.I. Joe Desert War. Not bad, not good. I would say that one little change would have very easily brought it out of the bad camp into the decent camp. Like you wouldn't say you still wouldn't say it was great, but you would say that it was good. Of just actually paying off the rivalry between Duke and the Saw Viper. I think that one change would have done so much good for this story that it's not even funny. But yeah. Anyway, I think that's really all I've got to say on this one. So yeah, I'm just another guy named James, and I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.